Have you ever wanted to try and paint object source lighting on your miniatures to illuminate them with a torch as they're in the nice scary darkness, or whether they're using magical effects to show off their awesome skills and power, but like me, we're too intimidated and scared by this technique to want to try and understand it and give it a shot? Well, in this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a nice, quick, simple, and easy way to paint object source lighting on your miniatures to give them some nice, vibrant impact onto a piece and really help make it stand out on the tabletop. Alright, so the first thing we want to do is we want to paint up the miniature itself before getting ready for the OSL. We'll paint it up to the point where we want that OSL to be. So for me, I'm painting up the entirety of the miniature here, and for me, I've got this explorer who looks like he's going through a cave or a dungeon, and he has the nice torch up above his head. So for me, I'm going with that sort of look, and I'm keeping all the colors relatively simple and basic, and most of all muted, because I wanted to really emphasize the OSL effect, and I didn't want any colors out there distracting from it, as this was like basically my first time trying OSL properly, so I didn't want to distract from anything else being brighter colored. Now, of course, if you were painting up a magic user, you know, a mage who's blasting off some magical effects, it wouldn't matter so much making everything sort of neutral and dulled down. For that reason, you totally could, but you wouldn't want to matter and bear that in mind so much, because you know, they can be big, bombastic, and flamboyant, and that sort of thing. So the color doesn't matter so much, and you go for magical effect. So you can go with crazy colors, but since I'm going with this natural explorer into a dungeon or a cave, I wanted everything to be muted down just that little bit to make and give off the effect that he is in a dark cave or dungeon and trying to light his way with the torch. So now we have our base coats all painted up. I'm going to be starting the first step into working into this OSL, and that is, of course, I'm placing on a wash. Now, like I said, I want this guy in a deep, dark dungeon or cave, so I'm going with a black wash, and I'm placing it entirely over everything. I'm not worrying about any of the colors that it would be darkening down, and in fact I end up by sort of making it a little too dark because I was really unsure of how I wanted to do this OSL and really give off the effect. So I ended up by putting on 2 layers of wash. Now you could totally do this if you're trying to go for the same effect that I have here when you see the finished piece, but you probably don't need to go that extreme, because I think I lost a little something by putting on 2 coats of black wash, as it turned everything super dark and everything was basically looking a little bit black. So one thing to look out for the future, 1 coat of black wash can be totally enough, and you would get a little bit of color that we've placed on here as well. And also too, one thing when I said about muting, making all of my colors really muted because I wanted it to be a dark piece, you could also negate that a little bit by having your different colors and then darkening down with the black itself. So just a couple of little things to think about when you're placing the wash onto the piece. So one more quick step when thinking about OSL as well, if you have any metallic areas, you want to go and pick them out with a highlight on there as well, because they are going to naturally, of course, be picked up by any bright light source and shine nicely. So going around your model, and like I have here, this adventurer has a small chainmail skirt on him, as well as that too is also of course carrying a sword in his hand. So I want to make sure I get that nice and highlighted up, but only focusing on the areas where the light is roughly gonna come from. So for me, you know I've got that torch nice and simply, so I can pick out the side of the blade where the light source is coming from to nice and easily pick out those highlights, and then just picking out any other small metallic areas because they're naturally going to catch any sort of light on them. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to explain a little bit of how I'm going to get this OSL to work and give you some thoughts to think about when you're painting up some OSL, to sort of put you into my mindset of how I want to paint this up and get you thinking about OSL in general. So as you can see, I have my light source just up above me here, and you can see that it's casting down on my face. So what I want to be doing is focusing on the areas where our light is naturally. So you can see it's got the top of my head here, the nose, my cheeks, And these are the areas when we're dry brushing it on that we want to be picking out. So I'm just going lightly over top, just carefully stroking my brush to pick out areas like that. Of course, when you're going with clothing and other things like that, we're just wanting to be hitting those surfaces. And since my light is coming from above me, I want to pick out all the areas that are just from the top down. Now, this is a nice and simple technique. If I was, of course, to go like this and bring it from the side, then of course I would want to focus from the side of my face rather than from the top. So it all depends on where you want your light source to be and whereabouts it's coming from. So hopefully that will give you a bit more understanding and where I'm trying to come from with this miniature here, as I'm trying to paint it from the top down, as he's got his hand up there with his torch and it's coming down on his face, so I'm trying to paint it down on that angle, just really light. One thing I can't emphasize enough is that you want to be doing really light brush strokes, building it up with our color, especially since I'm using very light colors on very dark paint. I want to be carefully building that up and working from our darkest color to our brightest color to where the highlights, of course, are pinpointed most. Like you can see around here, it's very, very high, and out here it's sort of, and on the side it's a little bit darker. So that's what the ideas I want to be thinking about, and you want to be thinking about when you are painting up OSL or objects or sliding on a miniature. Okay, now I've sort of explained how I'm thinking about OSL. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you in a practical sort of term so you get an idea of it. And you can see what I'm trying to do here is I want to pick an area that I want my OSL to be. So I'm going for right around this piece here. This here is a dry palette, and it's going to show you nice textures that you have on here, easy to dry brush. It's a great way for enhancing your dry brushing. In fact, I even have a video on dry brushing, so maybe you want to check that out as well, on how you can level up your dry brushing, and it includes on how to make a dry palette in the video as well. But as you can see, what I've done is I've started with my darkest color. In this case it is going to be orange, and I want to spread that out over the entirety of the area that I want to be lit up. And then once I have done that and built up those layers, like I said, I want to build it up nice and lightly and getting it everywhere of the angles that I want it to be, to have that lighting available and showing up on the piece. And then I want to come in with our lighter one over top. In this case it's yellow for me, and building that up on top of it. Now in some cases you might want to go back and forth a little bit, just pushing and pulling your light source a little bit. Like you can see here, I was a little too strong on it. I want it to be a more subtle transition, so you can go with hard transitions, soft transitions. It's really up to you with what you want to go here, but this is sort of the practical step I wanted to be taking, and hopefully the demonstration can show you of how an area I want to be lit up on the piece before we go into the actual piece itself. And just we're sort of futzing with it a little bit, but dry brushing is the best way to get this nice and simple and easy, because like I said, I want to make this simple and easy for you guys to understand and practice OSL for yourself, so it doesn't seem so big and scary. But what we're going to do now is go on to the actual piece itself and apply our OSL to it. Okay, so now getting into the actual OSL itself. So we have our miniature painted up, we've talked about how we want it to work and how I'm going to go about it, and showing you a little demonstration of how I'm going to build it up to get to the point. Now as you can see, I'm applying it here nice and lightly. Like I said, the best thing to do is to go lighter than you think you will. It probably doesn't even look like I'm really registering anything on here. It's very, very slowly tinting this to the orange. And as I have said too when I was explaining it, that I want to be thinking about where our lighting is coming from. So I know we've got a torch above his head where the lighting's coming from, so I want to pick out all of those raised areas on there. Now I take this to probably a little bit more extreme than you would want to, but I wanted to take it to the extreme for the video itself so you get a really good understanding of it. I think it turned out pretty cool. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it too. Maybe you want to try and do something like this, so take it to the extreme as far as you can, because you can see some amazing artwork of people taking OSL to the extreme as well. So I sort of was going a bit between that one part to show you how to do it and get a grasp of it, and so I wanted to emphasize it a little bit more. As well as myself, I've never painted anything with OSL like extreme like that before, so I wanted to give it a try as well. So that was also fun, and you can see that I'm just lightly building up those layers very carefully, and building it up. Now I've always got, when I want to apply some more paint when I feel like it's running out, I've got my dry palette there to test the consistency of my dry brushing as I'm going along, and it's just about building them up. And then once I've established where I want all of my outer color to be, we can move on to the inner color of the piece. So since I said of course we're doing it with a torch, the inner color of this piece is going to be yellow, so I'm not going to go out as far as I did with the orange, but picking out the sort of the edges, like, you know, when you're highlighting up a piece regularly without any OSL, you want those nice sharpest points to be the highest point of color. So that's where I want to naturally do that as well. So the points that are the sharpest but also closest to the light source. So I'm not really focusing way out there on the bottom of his cloak where the orange is going. I'm just picking out the very fine point of it, so it's catching that little bit of tiny light. And also I'm not worrying too much about the metallic area as well, because that's going to naturally have its own shine on it, so I can go a little bit crazy there with the brighter color on there as well, because it's going to naturally pick out the brightest part to reflect, so I can go with a little bit more yellow on there too. And then once you're happy with it, I am doing this part for last, and that is painting the actual light source itself. And this is going to be with the color itself as like a base coat, basically. So for me, of course, I'm going with the yellow and the orange, because that's the color of the light. So painting that in with a nice bold base coat to really emphasize that this is where the light is coming from, because it's going to be naturally brighter than the dry brushing you're doing over the entirety of the piece. So as well as that too, I'm not making it entirely yellow. I want to add a little bit of orange there, sort of blending the colors a little bit together to try and make it look like it's also naturally a torch that's lighting some flame on there as well. So of course, if you were doing magic and that effect, you would use this as a base coat of your brightest color that the magic is coming from, and then you would fan out the colors with the dry brushing. So with all that complete now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the glamour shot of this piece and hopefully get the lighting a little bit nicer so you can see OSL in its full glory. So let's get into those glamour shots now to see how the entirety of our piece came out. And there you have it. There is our miniature finished and fully painted up with a object source lighting effect, or OSL, on a miniature. So I hope this video has been helpful for you guys in learning a new technique for miniature painting, so you can take some of your miniatures up to that next level. As well as that, I hope I've made this video helpful and informative, and made the process of OSL a little bit less intimidating for everyone to give a try, because it's been super fun. And just on the few miniatures that I've given it a try to make this video, as well as just in my free time, I must say it's quite a fun little effect to do. I'm not perfect at the technique, but this is the technique that'll get you on your way to moving up to those crazy levels that some of the high level painters can do. But with some simple dry brushing and thinking about where the light source is coming from, you can really make a OSL super quick and simple like I have here. So like I said guys, I hope this video has been helpful for you, and I hope you'll enjoy doing this sort of thing in the future. But with all that said guys, I'd like to thank you all for watching, and I can't wait to see you all in the next video.